Welcome back, everybody, to the Predictive Playbook powered by Sportsmemo.com. I'm your host, John Ryan, and I am pleased to have our regular Wednesday afternoon guest, and Jesse Schule. Welcome to the show, Jesse. How was your weekend? How's your week starting out?
I guess it's refreshing to start out the week knowing that we've got the NBA basketball finished and the NHL playoffs finished for the year, and we can now focus on baseball and really look forward to football season.
Yeah, I know both of us were hoping there was going to be a game seven, so we'd have a lot to talk about, but it just didn't seem to be in the cards. And I think last night when you saw that there was 20,000 crazed fans in the arena and then 65,000 outside of the arena, that it was going to be a tough mountain for the Suns to overcome for sure. And, Giannis, 50 points. I mean, what are you going to say? It was one of the most incredible NBA playoff performances by an individual that I can remember that was, not named LeBron or Michael Jordan or Kobe. So, it always feels like a little bit of a hangover, though, when the season finally ends, doesn't it, Jesse? Like, it's just like, oh, man, now, what am I? I'm certainly not looking forward to watching The Bachelor.
Well, it certainly feels
What's going to
different for
replace
me.
it?
I mean, the last 2 years I was coming off sweeps with my futures bets for the finals, and I'm used to winning big in the finals. And this year I went 0 for 3, so that's a new feeling for me. The first time in 5 years that haven't won on my futures bets with the NBA finals. So you live and you learn. You can't win every year. You certainly can't sweep every year, I guess.
Well, that's and that's part of being the transparent person and people that we are, and that's why we have the followings that we do, because that's exactly right. I had the Pittsburgh Pirates on Sunday, and they were up 6-0, plus 165 dog, looking pretty sweet as a 5-unit play, and then I saw the final, and I could barely believe my eyes. 7-6 Mets, in extra innings. But it happens. That's the whole point. There's things that we can research until the cows come home, and sometimes that isn't even enough. But it was my first losing NBA season in the past 6. So I struggled basically throughout the whole season. Maybe a little bit towards the end, it started to get better. But now in the NBA playoffs, it just changed, and it's the 4th straight year now of winning picks in the playoffs. So I don't know what the difference was between the regular season and the playoffs, but I did get a lot more totals from my models, though, in the playoffs, and they did quite well, and that's what carried the day. But, from week to week, we put out picks. We really don't know what's going to happen tonight, but we're putting out our best educated, most sophisticated betting opportunities that we believe in, and that, unlike other shows, Jesse, we actually bet our money on these games. We're, considered professionals by doing that, as opposed to other shows where it's just opinions and there is nothing at stake. And I think that makes a big difference right from the start. It's just my little take on it. That's why I like talking with you and everybody else that comes on these shows. Speaking of which, at 8 o'clock this morning, I had Nick Borman on of Wager Talk. That's the resident PGA professional sports bettor, and he's 8 for 8 on my shows. He just kicked butt this past week at the Open Championship. He went 5-0 in the matchups. One of those winners, though, was was Herbert, and I had him in my DraftKings lineup, and he didn't make the cut, but he won that matchup. So I didn't give that any thought. I just figured if he's going to win the matchup, he's going to make the cut. And all my numbers said he was going to make the cut, and he missed by 1. But Morikawa was unbelievable. Be that young, and then to say the things he said so graciously when accepting the claret jug was just nothing short of spectacular. And that's about it in the PGA. This week we're in Minneapolis at Blaine, Minnesota, actually, just outside Minneapolis proper. For the 3M Open. And this is an important event, Jesse, because it's the FedEx Cup points now. Even though the 4 majors are done, everybody's turning their attention to the FedEx Cup, which is awarded to the winner of $25 million. And that's a pretty big purse, and you have to be within the top 125 in the world golf rankings to be included in the first event of the four. But anyway, I'd rather be talking about the NBA, but I had to do a little pitch there. And I also would be remiss if I didn't mention David Berryman, too, of ESPN. He's the deputy editor of sports betting content at ESPN. He's been there for a long time. And he, too, has been on my show a long time now. 14 out of 16 events he has cashed. At one point, his one DraftKings lineup was 34th or 54th out of a little bit more than 300,000 entries. And he was starting to feel that, that possibility of winning the million, which is what we all do that for. But it didn't turn out so good. And it turned out very well for him, though. I didn't mean it that way. He did extraordinarily well. 14 out of 16 events, he's profited on the show. And between him and Nick Borman, I don't think you need to go anywhere else for your DraftKings fantasy advice for the PGA and your best bets. I think you can confidently tail them, Jesse, not knowing how golf is played or bet. And that's how confident I am with them.
Well, that's a fitting description for me because golf isn't really something that I pay the utmost attention to.
Well, I can understand. I sometimes wish I would have adopted that path in my life, but I've been playing it a long time and had a handicap down at 1.8 at one time about 20 years ago, and now I'm not playing nearly as much as back then. It was to get under 3, you have to be playing every day and practicing, and it's the short game. It's the game is played with the wedge and the putter, and not necessarily the driver, but because we're guys, we have to see how far we can hit the damn ball, and it doesn't matter if it goes out of bounds. It went 300 yards out of bounds, and that's good. But when you're on the PGA Tour, that's not good. And poor DeChambeau, I think you definitely probably didn't hear this, but he called out his manufacturer of his driver, which I believe is Cobra.
I did hear that.
You did hear that? Well, good for you then. And you are becoming a golf aficionado. But I thought that was just classless. I couldn't even believe it was true. And then I heard it and saw it, and I was like, what? Like, where's his publicist when you need him?
Well, I think he had to walk back those comments shortly after, didn't he? I mean, he apologized and said, perhaps I shouldn't have said that. I let my emotions get the best of me, or something along those lines.
He did, but the horse was already out of the barn then. And the manufacturer did fire back too, I thought that was good because it was unjustifiable. But looking at Major League Baseball now, I wanted to take a look at some of the standings here, and Aaron Nola didn't pitch as well as I had thought he would last night, and the Yankees hit 2 home runs off of him. In the first couple innings, he looked very, very sharp. The curveball is definitely one of the best in baseball. It has a 2,510 RPM rotation to it, and really only Rich Hill, who's a lefty, has a higher spin rate at 2,700. And Nola had off for the All-Star break, and he was throwing 95 consistently beginning of the game. And I thought that was clearly a good sign that he may become the equivalent of Zach Wheeler. And wouldn't it be ironic if Zach Wheeler won the Cy Young now because DeGrom is out, and win it, over the Mets ace. The Mets probably more than anything wish they could have kept Wheeler and had him available, so when DeGrom went out, they'd have somebody of quality to pitch. But they don't, and I think the Phillies are going to overtake them in the standings. Do you have any thoughts on the National League East?
Well, I agree with what you're saying with the Phillies. I mean, I'm looking at DeGrom, and I think we spoke about this last week on the show. And I said, if anything happens to DeGrom, the Mets are in big trouble. And I had a quick glance at their stats, and they've won 77% of DeGrom starts this year. And the number 2 man in the rotation, Stroman, In the first half, they only won 47% of his starts. So, you know, they're going to struggle to keep pace with a team like the Phillies if DeGrom can't make it back. Have you heard that he's not coming back?
No, but at the same time, I haven't heard how long, and it's a forearm issue
Mm-hmm.
on the throwing arm, obviously, that's keeping him out. So if it was a bicep, I think that would be far more serious because that's the tendon that a lot of times gets really screwed up. It's not the Tommy John tendon, but the bicep muscle is a problem when that thing starts to cramp up, and that happened to Cueto earlier this year for the Giants. I believe that was his missed start, but he came back fine. My guess is that's not going to be too long, Jesse. He might miss 1 or 2 starts, is my guess right now, but nobody really knows, I don't think. Yeah, for
I was
sure.
reading a bit about it this morning, and they were mentioning a host of various injuries on the right side that they tend to describe as general right side soreness. And I mean, if you look at his what he's done so far this year, he's missed more than a few starts, sort of scattered here and there. So I think at best you can expect him to miss 4 or 5 starts in the second half, as he did in the first half, and that's already troubling. If he misses any more than that, it's big trouble.
And the Mets are winning right now against the Reds, 7-0 on the road in Cincinnati, and suddenly the Reds have found ways to lose and are not playing well. They were playing so well coming into the break, and the break seems to have taken all that momentum away from them. But I still think they are a team that can challenge Milwaukee for the Central. I think, too, that the Cubs, from what I'm hearing, they're going to be sellers, and that means that Kimbrel, the closer who is rejuvenated as a 35-year-old, 22 saves, I believe he has on the year now. That the Phillies are probably going to target him. And I do think that that's the missing key for the Phillies, is if they get a closer of that caliber, I see no reason why they won't win that division unless they lose Rhys Hopkins or Bryce Harper to some silly injury. But that's the piece they need, and I think that bullpen instantly becomes a whole lot better with somebody like that added to the unit. But the Reds, I think they're going to be just fine. Everybody loses 4 in a row, 5 in a row. It's not uncommon for division champs to go through those losing ways, and sometimes more than once. Looking out west, the Dodgers. What a loss by the Giants last night, right? They were up 5-0, I believe, and they were up by 5 runs.
When you mentioned that you lost with the Pirates, I was thinking I feel sorry for guys that had the Giants on the run line.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
That was a tough one.
Yes, it was, and the Giants had to come right back. That's the beauty of baseball, and it is similar to golf in many ways because you have to put the bad in the rearview mirror. Just like if you strike out, that can't be in your thought process when you're coming up for your next at bat. And the guys that play at the major league level are very good at having short memories. And the same for the PGA Tour. You can't be thinking about the shot you just almost shanked on the next shot, or you're going to shank it. And that's truly the power of the mind in these sports for sure. So in the West, it seems to be pretty clear cut. The Dodgers are going to take control of that. The betting market last week when we looked at it, Jesse was telling us that too. And I just wanted to bring up the futures bet here, team futures. So now Dodgers are plus 380 to win the World Series. Houston is plus 625. White Sox 8-1. Padres 8-1. Mets, surprisingly, the Mets, maybe I'm not reading the market correctly thinking that the Phillies can win that division. But the Mets are listed as 5th favorite to win it all at 8.5-1. And the Red Sox, who are in first place in the AL East, are 11-1. and they're going to get Chris Sale back pretty soon. So I think that's man, I don't agree with the market. I just totally don't agree with that. Red Sox are
It's probably hype
wow.
around DeGrom. I think there's a lot of that. You see a guy like DeGrom, who appears to be larger than life, unstoppable. He hits the ball. He you know ERA just over one. Having probably one of the most incredible seasons we've ever seen. And people want to pile on that. They want to be a part of that. They want to back the Mets. And I think I've noticed the same thing with Ohtani with the Angels. Um, you look at the betting markets and you look at the lines sometimes when the Angels are playing and they're a 2-1 favorite at home. I mean, they're just not that good of a team as a team. I mean,
Yeah.
Ohtani is great, but the Angels, I don't have a lot of respect for the Angels as a big favorite in some of those situations.
Yeah, and without Trout, that's a key piece too. That he's on the 60-day IL, and I'm not sure what the plan is for his return. But when he's not in the lineup, that's a huge, huge loss. So looking at the playoff odds, the Yankees were minus 130, and before the season started, I think they were almost 3-1 to win the division. Now, to make the playoffs, they're plus 100. They were plus 135 just 2 days ago. So this taking 2 out of 3 from Boston and also winning last night is firming up the love for the Yankees to make the playoffs. But essentially, the market's telling us it's a coin flip. And I have said for weeks now they're not going to make it. And there's just not enough out there for them to go shopping and bring in what they need to bring in to fill those holes, especially in the starting rotation. It's been weak. I don't know how else to describe it. But in
And I've
the
heard that they're targeting more bats rather than pitchers. The rumor has it they're looking at Joey Gallo, Starling Marte, and I mean that's gonna shake a few feathers, and people are gonna raise their eyebrows. But those guys can't pitch.
they might have to though, and when they're getting blown out 15-3, they bring in a utility infielder to throw an inning. But I mean, seriously, that's another hole in their lineup. They need a left-handed bat in the worst way. They need at least one starter, and a starter that can average 6 innings a start, so it takes pressure off that bullpen now that's starting to show the wear and tear of having to throw as many innings as they have thrown. And the worst thing is that they don't get runners to touch home plate. The expected runs scored differential between the actual runs scored is one of the widest of any team in the last 10. Just a week ago, they scored 6 more runs than the worst team in baseball, which was, I forget who it was now. I want to say
Arizona.
Baltimore. Arizona's offense is, they score runs, not in reckless abandon, but they do score runs. It's their whole pitching and bullpen is just triple A. I don't know how else to describe that one, but let's see what we have here for runs scored here in the Angels. That'll be good to look at. So, by comparison, Houston has scored 517 runs. Their run differentials plus 136. The Arizona they have scored 405. They've given up 552, which is a negative 147. And the Yankees, let's see, the lowest I'm seeing here is Pittsburgh so far at 346 runs scored. Miami 372. 360 for the Mets. And the Yankees are 388. And Baltimore actually is ahead of them now, 392. So they're the weakest offense in the AL East. The Yankees are, wow, only Kansas City. Only Kansas City has scored fewer runs than the Yankees at 382. And then comparing it to the National League, the Mets obviously 360, Miami 372, and Pittsburgh 346. So they're among the lowest run scoring teams in the league, despite that lineup and despite that payroll. It's kind of incredible.
The thing is, no matter who they pick up, and we know the Yankees are going to spend money, and they don't mind going all in. They're going to struggle to keep pace with teams like Toronto and Boston. As you say, Chris Sale's coming back for Boston. They've got some ground to make up there, and now Toronto's going back to Toronto at the end of this month. They're going to be playing in Toronto at home and in the Sky Dome again, and this team looks pretty impressive.
Yeah, Toronto's flying under the radar, in my opinion. They're a team to reckon with for sure, and they definitely will be out there in the marketplace looking to add. And I just read an article yesterday on them, and it was relief, and I can't remember the name offhand. I want Charlie Morton is a starter, but I think that name is gonna start becoming more noticeable in the headlines. And then of course Chicago, if they become sellers. I also think Atlanta, without their key all-star Acuna, and missing Ian Anderson now too, for that looks like it's going to be a long miss from getting back into the rotation. They could become sellers, and one way they can is Freeman is at the end of a contract year. He could go to a place like San Diego, go for a championship, a rental player to San Diego, and then re-sign with the Braves, for whatever number of years and how much money. So I think that will unfold as well, and then that clearly opens up the door for the Phillies to, walk right through. The Braves are not the same team without Freeman and Ian Anderson in that lineup for sure. But the Olympics are coming up too. The women's soccer was stunned today, unfortunately, 3-0 by Sweden. And I haven't had a chance to check the how that group stuff works, but I know you don't have to necessarily win the group, is my understanding, to advance into the next round, which would be the equivalent of the knockout round that we saw with the recent tournament over in Europe. But I think it's called the elimination round, actually. But I'll have to look that stuff up, and I do hope that it's not a round robin type of situation, because then if Sweden goes undefeated, U.S. is out. And that we haven't had the opening ceremonies yet, and that would be disappointing if that actually was the case.
It would be hard for me to believe that one loss would disqualify them, and you certainly don't expect them to suffer a second loss. So, I
agree completely. Sweden actually plays Australia next, and that is Saturday at 3:30 in the morning Eastern Standard Time. That match takes place, and then I'm trying to find the U.S. here. I don't see them, so they must be not lined yet, and waiting for, I guess. Oh, here it is. New Zealand is playing USA, and USA's 30-1 favorite. So 30-1.
What was the price on the Sweden game? I mean, Sweden must have been a 10-1 dog or something in that game.
It had to be, and I don't know the answer to that. And I can't get the history on DraftKings, but that's something to definitely look up. It had to be pretty big. Yeah,
I don't
that's
follow women's soccer quite that closely, but I'm going to have a look at it here.
yeah, I don't either. But when it comes to Olympic time, you do start following it.
Doesn't look like Sweden's even ranked in the top five.
Yep, that is correct.
Looking at it here, or Sweden is fifth. They ranked fifth in women's soccer. So that would be quite an upset.
It sure would. I'm looking at there's betting lines for the number of gold medals by country, and of course the U.S. is the clear favorite in that. But their actual betting line is over under 43 and a half gold medals, not gold, silver, bronze, just gold medals. So it's 44 events or 43 events, depending on how you're looking at it, that the U.S. is going to have a gold medal winner. And that's pretty remarkable. And I think being patriotic, I would bet the over.
I guess they're going to have to get it done in the swimming pool to rack up those medals. The swimming events usually they come with a lot of medals are given out.
Yes, that is true. Long time ago, Jesse, I was an All-American swimmer, so I'm actually going to cover that for Wager Talk and track and field.
So you probably know what Phelps's record is at one Olympics.
Yeah, and Mark Spitz, John Neighbor in '76, Rowdy Gaines, all those guys. He's now a commentator. Rowdy Gaines is. But yeah, the times that the swimmers are swimming now are nothing short of miraculous, and it's so fast now that if you would have asked any of us back in the day, could somebody swim that fast, and the answer would be that's impossible. But they changed some of the rules around too. They allow backstroke now to flip over on their stomach to make the turn. That was illegal. That obviously makes it much, much faster. Dolphin kicks are allowed in all the events now, which they weren't before. And the swimsuits, there's no resistance. The water just slides right on by you, and it's like I can remember the first time I shaved my head, and most people would think that's kind of nuts. But in swimming, when I first dove in for warm up, it felt like I had no head. Not that my hair was even long, but it was a lot of psychological too, because you could feel that it was making a difference. It was very, very streamlined, and it just made you even more psyched. But the technology in the sport has really propelled it, no pun intended. But anyway, what did you think of Game 6 last night? We can touch on that for a little bit, and then we'll do maybe a player prop I can provide for Major League Baseball. But first, Game 6, did it come out the way you thought it was going to be played?
Yeah, I can't say that I was shocked. I mean, we saw Milwaukee win 3 straight games. Giannis was great. The Suns played sloppy. They made mistakes. I was, but the margins were small in 2 of those 3 losses heading into Game 6, and I was hoping, and I had bet that Phoenix was going to clean some of that stuff up, and I thought they were due to win one of those close games, one of those games that was decided in the fourth quarter, and but once again, Devin Booker struggled with his shots, and you got to give credit to the Bucks. They played great. Giannis was great. But I was disappointed in Devin Booker. Everybody's talking about how great Giannis is, and like I say, he deserves credit. I think some of it's a little bit hyperbolic. I mean, I'm not ready to compare him to Shaq or Jordan, or I'm not ready to name him a top 5 player of all time like some people I've heard, but he was certainly the most valuable player of this year's finals, no doubt about that, which is quite surprising considering that it didn't look like he was even going to be a part of the finals after he hyperextended his knee.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. I took a look at the next year's odds to win the championship, and not surprisingly, Brooklyn Nets are there at 2-1, which I mean, there's no value. I don't know why anybody would bet that now. I don't think I've ever bet a futures bet more than probably 10 times in my entire life. Just I always had a problem with, like, back in the old day, you actually had to go to the window and give the money, and it would sit there doing nothing for 3 or 4 months, and it just never made sense to me. But at any rate, the Bucks are third most favored at +9-1, +900. Golden State Warriors 13-1. And they'll have Klay Thompson back next year too. And the rumor mill continues with Ben Simmons, and heard a pretty strong rumor that there was some serious interest from the Golden State Warriors with him. And wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, I expect the Warriors to be quite good next year. Really, they're in a pretty good spot right now.
They sure are. They're actually the same odds as Phoenix Suns, 13-1. And then we have the Utah Jazz 14-1. The Clippers and Sixers are 16-1, and then it jumps up to Denver at 20-1. So the marketplace is telling us that there's only two teams in the NBA, and that's the Lakers and the Nets.
Well, I wrote an article right before these playoffs titled "Why the Nets Will Not Win the Championship This Year," because they were an enormous favorite coming into these playoffs as well. And the reasons I gave were the chemistry with their big three. These guys haven't been known to be the best team players. They've got, there's concerns about attitudes and being poor teammates, and then there's injury concerns with all three players as well. Kyrie, Harden, and KD have all, they've had injury troubles, and when you put that all together, I don't see any reason to stray away from that logic heading into next year. I mean, they're just a year older. Harden appears to be a little heavier. I expect them to struggle with injuries. I expect them to struggle with chemistry, and they're not my pick to win it all. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. With the time we have left, Jesse, because we will be back here very shortly for probably about a 4:05, 4:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time start for Manny's Irish Pub, which is a virtual pub, obviously, and we all get together just as if we were stopping by the pub and getting together and talking sports with guys like Tony Finn and Rob Vino, Tony Mejia. And I believe Tony Finn and Tony Mejia will be on the show. And also Nick Borman, I believe, will be making an appearance to review the PGA event before we start tomorrow morning. And Rob Vino is out today. He's taking a day off from work and the show. So I hope he's having a good day today. And I think that's all that is coming on today. So it'll probably be from 4:10 to probably right around 5. And it'll be a lot of free picks, a lot of prop bets, a lot of just good stuff. It's a place that you can get it all in one shot from some of the best professionals there are. Guys that actually bet the money. So I'm looking at the Major League Baseball game 8:10 tonight with the Indians and the Astros. And granted, it is one of those value bets I'm making. So I'm not. These are types of bets that if you do them over the course of the season, they will pay off. But Eli Morgan is pitching for Cleveland, 1-3 with a 7.86 ERA. Doesn't sound like somebody you want to back, but we're getting 220, plus 220, on the money line. And I believe I don't see the run line just yet here, but it's got to be, plus 150, plus 140. So I like the run line with Cleveland tonight, and maybe just a sprinkle extra on the money line. Lance McCullers Jr., 7-2, 2.80 is pitching for Houston. who is 20 games over 500. The Indians are 2 games over 500, but I still think Cleveland's a very dangerous team if those bats ever start waking up. So that'll be my free pick for the show for our purposes. And do you want to add anything, Jesse? It's purely optional.
I do like your pick. I think I did bet against Morgan in his last start, and for that very same reason, that you mentioned, his numbers are pretty ugly when you look at them. But I thought he was surprisingly better than expected. Cleveland did lose that game, but it was a one run ball game, and they were in it the whole time. So I would tend to lean on the run line rather than going for the big money there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could easily be a one-run loss type situation. Looking at the scoreboard here, the Mets did win 7-0 over the Reds. So the Reds had 1 hit, and Marcus Stroman is filling that void that DeGrom left, and he's a stud too. Sometimes I think I forget that. But you said that early in the show. I have to mention this now because Stroman is 7-8 on the season with a 2.59 ERA. Okay, DeGrom has the Mets have won. What did you say? 73% of his starts.
77% of DeGrom starts they've won.
So that's a little bit better than 3 out of every 4. But with an ERA of whatever the heck it is, 0.8, they should win every single one. I mean, you score 2 runs for the guy, and it should be a team win, but it's not. And that's the thing with the Mets offense is pretty anemic, to say the least.
But that's not that rare, though. I mean, in Kershaw's best years with the Dodgers, they were losing his starts all the time. I mean, it was much the same.
Yep.
I think the Dodgers were winning less than 77% of Kershaw's starts when he was at his best.
Yep, that's very true. And when they did score runs, though, I'll have to look up the record for the Manny's Pub shows. That's a good thing to talk about. If the Dodgers scored 3 runs for him, the record was sick. It was positive. And when they lost for him, he obviously either got hit and gave up runs, or the Dodgers didn't score, and they didn't score 2.
When their biggest bat was Matt Kemp, they didn't have much of an offense.
Yep, that's right. Yep. Yeah, that is so true. They had a starting rotation that would scare anybody. But anyway, I guess we'll call it a show here. We'll get ready for Manny's Pub here in about 20 minutes. It's 3:45 now, Eastern Standard Time. So, Jesse, thanks very much for being on the show. And guys, make sure you get over to sportsmemo.com and get Jesse's subscriptions. Don't get a pick or a 5-unit pick that he releases. Get a subscription so you can take an honest test drive of a guy that really knows what he's doing. He's been around for a long time, and you simply have to trust me on this. It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. You're not going to regret paying the money to do it, and you're going to get a very good product in return. So take my word for it. And if I'm wrong, you can yell at me. All right? So for Jesse Schule, myself, sportsmemo.com, and this Predictive Playbook channel, may all